anyone else in the household, while you play your video games or whatever your thing is, and it's unrealistic, it's unfair, and
Okay, I will
I'm
help James out more. I get it, okay? Just kidding.
I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, but
No, but like the problem with this is that there are definitely studies done on this, but there aren't enough studies done on it because medical trials are made for men.
yeah.
Women are not like the main subject immediately for every single medical trial that exists.
Yeah, and pretty much like all of our medical science is based on the male body. Like the groundwork of what we know about the human body is all male bodies.
Yep.
And I shouldn't say that. I should say cisgender men's bodies, to be specific here.
Right.
So like we really don't understand how things work for cisgender women's bodies, and especially we don't understand trans people's bodies.
Not as much as we could if, I mean, even medication is made for, like, doses of medication is made for men.
Absolutely.
And cisgender male bodies.
I am able to take a half dose of almost everything, like over-the-counter medication, unless I'm having like a really bad day. Like I can usually take 1 pill instead of 2 if 2 is the regular dose, and I'm fine. And even like my prescription medications, I literally have to cut them in half. But that's a whole other thing. Oh, no, go ahead.
A couple more like statistics on the same line, though. When we look at like feminine body features, things like seatbelts are made for men's bodies. So 47% of women are more likely to suffer injuries in a car crash.
Yeah.
For every female character in the movies, there are 2.24 more male characters in movies. Wow. There's women still in jail right now for driving.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yep. And women in the military are more likely to be killed by fellow soldiers than in battle. All of this is coming down to there have been actually communities formed around the world that are specifically for women to escape gender-based violence. Yeah. Like there's actual full communities like in Finland and Kenya, where in order to get away from like violence that's caused by perpetuating these ideas of gender, you have to create a whole community just to get away from it.
I just had a thought, which we could talk about for way longer than we have time for, but we can come back to it in other discussions. The idea of women as being passive and being the receivers is, I am certain, without having looked it up, is intrinsically linked to women as being the penetrated in sex. Like, we are literally the receivers of, heteronormative heterosexual sex. And so I am 100% certain that a lot of our receptivity, passivity, quietness and demureness is because that is how dominant culture, i.e. the patriarchy, has portrayed us.
Yes.
I feel like there is a certain aspect of like our being passive that is extrapolated into violence very easily. Like I think that women as being receptacles or receivers for male physicality and emotions, there is something there that's tying these two together. Like, you are the site upon which I dump my negativity, my fears, my anger, my violence, because you are the receiver, so I will give it all to you. And we're raised that way. Like we were just talking about how, women in the household are supposed to be the everything, the one person support network. And the role of masculinity, the roles that people who are masculine are taught that they must embody are so strictly enforced that I feel as if there's an enormous amount of pressure on masculine people, and the feminine people in their lives end up being the pressure release valve, where like everything just gets dumped onto them, and that includes violence and abuse.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But I was just going to be like, so just don't be passive, people. But that is clearly not an answer, because feminine identified people who are not passive, things often don't go well for them. But again, that's like a whole thing that we could get into that will make me extremely depressed, that we really don't have time to fit in this episode.
Yeah, but I do think that it is important to note that if you step out of your role as a lady, and step into the characteristics of what people think are masculine, then people are still upholding these male supremacist ideologies. That person is more likely to get violence than those who don't.
Right.
And so sometimes it's easier just to do your thing and, not do what Dolly Parton has done.
Right.
It's sometimes worse for people who want to step into that bigger role.
Yeah. If breaking those gender norms, even though femininity as a concept may not be as strictly defined as masculinity, stepping outside of the suggested behaviors for femininity and for performing femininity is extremely dangerous.
Also, stepping into roles of traditional femininity and out of the roles of masculinity for people who prefer, that side is also equally dangerous, because you're like exposing yourself to that patriarchal view of the receptacle.
Right. Yeah. And for some reason, like enraging cisgender dudes who, like, I don't understand why there is so much anger about, especially, people who were raised to be masculine or started out as more masculine and then move over into the more feminine area of things, like trans women. I don't understand what the problem is. Like, is it like the home team is like mad that you're leaving? Is it that they're jealous that they can express themselves?
No. Men don't get those kind of feelings. They're not overreacting. They're just reacting.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's totally legit. They're not being hysterical. They're asserting themselves.
Right. And those of us who stand up to it are overreacting and being hysterical.
Right. Yeah. It's so wild. I feel like there's just a huge conversation to be had about how, like, you can't perform femininity right. Like, no matter where you started and where you end up, there's just nobody's ever going to be like, hey, good job. Hey, here's your female card. Like,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense, because from where I'm sitting, where I grew up in a family of cowboys, extremely toxic, masculine group of people, men can do everything, including what a woman can do, but don't. But
if I wanted to do these dishes, I would do them so much better than you do.
Yeah, but then, like, those who do step into the female gender roles would be considered doing it better, and yet men get so mad when somebody who is seen as masculine actually does it.
Yeah, like, where's the anger coming from? I just don't understand that part. Like, there's some, like, visceral connection in their heart to, like, oh no, someone's doing something unmanly. It personally offends me. I don't get what that is about. And there's so much violence.
Dangerous, because women are the controllers of creation, and by controlling women, you're controlling creation.
But that's the thing. Not all women can create life. That's trans women and non-trans women alike. Like, not everybody can have babies. So, like, I think that you're right. Like, it is tied to that, like, fear of the feminine as this mysterious and powerful force. But that it's a very symbolic tie. Like, in the moment of a bunch of dudes who just discovered that they had been hitting on someone who is a trans woman, getting angry and beating the hell out of that woman. Like, right. What?
But that's my whole point, is that it is all symbolic. None of it is real. and that technically all people are responsible for, how humanity is right now. And so to really separate those two and say that this is why entirely based on creation, but then you find that people get angry when those norms are broken down by the people who are in the middle of these two sides of the spectrum. It comes to the triangle of money, power, and sex. When you are breaking down those things by not following the rules, then it makes people angry who are upholding those things.
Oh, right. Like they're spending all of their energy on upholding that triangle. And when they see somebody who's not doing it the way that they're doing it or just isn't doing it at all, it's like the people who are getting really mad right now because they're talking about possibly forgiving some student loan debt. And all of these people are like, you can't forgive other people's student loan debts because I paid off my student loans the hard way. And it's like, so what? Like, so you worked really hard. I'm sorry, that sucks. But like, why do you want to make other people suffer? It's the same mind.
Yeah. Like, you shouldn't have had to work that hard, and people shouldn't have to do that today. People should be able to buy houses without having to like figure out how to pay off all of their student loan debt.
Yeah. And people should be able to like, dress how they want to dress and express themselves how they want to express themselves. And just because you, sir, have decided to uphold all of the norms that the patriarchy has thrust upon you, that sucks for you. I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable with it, but like, you don't have to take it out on other people who live differently.
Well, it's because they're benefiting from it. When you're benefiting from it and you even kind of inherently like feel that like beneficial relationship that you have with power is being taken away, even by somebody else not following the rules, then you're going to want to do everything you can to keep that power. And that's like the same problem that we have with a lot of systemic issues in the United States today.
Yeah.
When you're not upholding the rules of gender, then you're saying that white straight males should not be the ones holding all the power.
Oh my God, you're totally right. That's it. That's the thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, we did it. Let's celebrate.
Pop the champagne. Let's do this.
Yeah. We don't even need a second season now.
Yeah. Oh my God. So this is our feminine finale.
Yeah.
Of season 1, where we have cracked open some of the biggest topics about sexuality and gender in the colonized world, which is the world that we live in right now. So we're just getting started, people. I'm so excited. We have a giant list of topics that we want to cover, some of which are like smaller categories nested under topics we've already discussed, most of which we're going to come back to that triangle of sex, money, and power, which is probably what we should have just named the podcast. Damn it. But I don't know what we're going to start back with because we have this huge list that we've got to go through and like pick our topics. But I think next season we're looking at doing some more interviews. So we'll have more guests on and getting into more specific topics that we can really like dig into.
Is there any that you're specifically like excited about?
I'm particularly interested in talking more specifically about sex. Like, I think because we were doing a lot of like large overview episodes this season, sex was always like brought up, but not really like focused on. And I have so many thoughts. And
totally.
Lots of people who can talk fluently about sex from many different angles. One thing that I wanted to talk about today, but didn't fit in, is how promiscuity or the lack thereof fits into definitions of femininity.
There's lots of topics that, like you said, are more like based in sex and sexuality, but I feel like these main topics that we discussed in the first season are extremely important foundations to jump off into deeper topics of sex
Agreed.
are.
Agreed. We're gonna go